Earning with information. Costly to produce, cheap to reproduce. The title of this talk is Earning with Information. However, I would like to begin with making a distinction between data and information. Data is a form of information. A song encoded into digital form and printed on a CD is data. The same applies for a movie on a DVD or a software program. To an increasing degree, we can encode things into a digital format. Information, as such, need not be encoded into a digital format. The value of information might be in the information itself. For example, if you have a lot of information about your customers, you might be able to use this information to create better products. In this talk, I have an emphasis on information that can be encoded into digital form. The first thing one should learn about earning with information is that information is costly to produce and cheap to reproduce. This means, for example, making a movie might cost millions, but once that movie is in digital form, it is simple and can be copied at no cost. Most of us have, through experience, understood this feature, but we have not looked at what are the best strategies to cope with this issue. In the beginning, many people emphasized the importance of copyright. The problem with copyright is that you will have to be able to enforce it, otherwise it has no value. From practice, we know that not even big music companies have been able to protect their assets through copyrights or copyright protection. My advice is that one should have other ways to protect information based, and I mean data-based assets. Economists talk about sunk costs. Sunk costs exist in the physical environment. A good example is a boat leaving the harbor or an airplane. If the boat is half empty, there is no way to recover the costs of the empty seats. In the physical world, companies have come up with different strategies to cope with sunk costs. If you write a book or make a movie, it is increasingly unlikely that somebody will buy the rights to your movie, the rights to your book, or the rights to your software. In this respect, you have a sunk cost with an information-based product. When information is costly to produce and cheap to reproduce, it also means that there are great possibilities for marketing. If the cost of reproduction is zero, you could give away free samples and try and use free samples to encourage customers to buy into your product or service. Since the cost of reproduction is zero, it does not make sense to add a percentage margin to zero when pricing your product. With reproduction cost zero, one should attempt to price your service according to its value to the user. For example, if I have a bad toothache, the value of repairing the toothache is high. Luckily, I do not have to tell the dentist how bad my tooth hurts, and therefore she cannot price to total value. In the information world, this is the game that suppliers and consumers are continuously playing. Consumers check the internet for prices, and suppliers are trying to find the value to the user and base pricing on the value to the user. When the cost of reproduction is zero, bundling can be an effective strategy. With bundling, one can prevent another competitor entering a market. If you are a big player and competitors attempt to enter your market with a product that covers only part of the services your product has, you can simply give this part of your product for free. Bundling also works when creating new markets. It sometimes makes sense to give an additional service for free, or even an additional product for free, if it will give access to a larger market. This was also the case in Finland, when after allowing the bundling of the mobile handset and the 3G service, the 3G market finally took off. Airlines are great at playing this game. They call it revenue management. An airline might have 100 flights each day, 100 seats on each plane, and the reservations might be open 1 year ahead. Hence, an airline has 3.65 million available seats. Then the game to search for value to customer begins. An airline will have different price segments. It will follow the interest to different flights, and based on interest, earlier experience, and on how different categories fill up, the price of individual seats will gradually change. In this way, the airline is looking for maximum profit. At the end of the day, the consumer might find himself in a position where only expensive tickets are available for a holiday weekend. In the revenue management game, the airline is also using information asymmetry to create profit. Information asymmetry basically means that the airline has information which the other party does not have. The airline company is benefiting from a huge amount of data. This is referred to as big data, and companies are striving to use their data, in other words their information, as efficiently as possible. A common strategy used with costly to produce, cheap to reproduce information-based products is to attempt to create lock-in and to rely on switching costs. Lock-in can be created through an agreement. For example, you agree to use a program or subscribe to a service for a fixed amount of time. Switching costs refer to the fact that if you, for example, want to switch supplier, you might need to spend additional time learning the new system. This time spent is money and thus a cost. Let us assume that a customer wants you to develop a software program for his company. You know all the details and can estimate that this program would cost you 3 million euros to build. And since you want a profit for your risk, you will give a price tag of 4 million. The customer, an experienced software buyer, knows that you will probably find other buyers for the program once it has been developed. The customer will not want to pay the total investment. The customer will attempt to negotiate. Perhaps you will end up in an agreement in which the customer will pay a startup cost of 1 million, make a service agreement of 500,000 per year for the next 3 years, and will leave you to cover your costs from future customers. In some cases, like in the case of LinkedIn, you will perceive that the service is free for 90% of the customers, and the paying 10% have additional services. An important feature with information-based products is network externalities. The term network externalities refers to the fact that as the number of users grow, the value of the service grows at an exponential rate. This can be seen in services like Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and WhatsApp. This in turn leads into a situation in which a startup company tries to grow the size of its community, and investors will value the community size. Twitter, for example, has a huge community, a huge value also, but the problem has been that it has not yet found a business model. The video service Netflix is using several of the above strategies to promote its service. For example, it is interesting to look at the pricing. $7.99 per month seems to have been a popular price. The $7.99 can be in dollars, euros, or in Japanese yen, or in any other currency. And surprisingly, the difference between the lowest and highest price when converted into dollars has been up to 60%. Netflix is also using network externalities. It does not seem to be worried if you are watching the content from two different IP addresses even at the same time. It sees this as a promotion effort and hopes that any non-paying customer will become a paying customer. Please note that if a family of two has purchased Netflix, it is also perfectly legal to watch from two different addresses at the same time. One further thing which I would like to underline is that one should be careful in where the value is. Going back to the example of airlines, most of the costs are in the airplanes and in the physical environment. However, as discussed in the airline example, value is created through information. A great example along these lines is how you book a hotel. As a customer of Hotels.com, I have learned to rely on the information given by the portal. As a frequent user of the service, I might get every 10th night for free in the hotel of my choice, of course within a certain price range. Value and the ability to capture value has moved from the single hotel towards the portal. Earning with information is simple once you know how. One of the original books I read was a book titled Information Rules by Shapiro and Varian. Look the authors up on the internet. Remember, costly to produce, cheap to reproduce. Price your product based on its value to the user. Give free samples to create a market. Use advertising and marketing to the full. Create lock-in. Benefit from switching costs. Use bundling as a strategy. And do not forget the value of network externalities.